Why is music theory important for performers? Music theory is often viewed as an academic subject, but in reality, it is a practical tool that helps musicians understand, interpret, and perform music more effectively. It provides the language and structure needed for expressive and informed playing. There's countless benefits of music theory. One of the most important aspects is it does improve your sight reading and memorization. When you know theory better, in terms of knowing your scales, your arpeggios, knowing dominant chords, diminished chords, and more, you can recognize patterns, you can recognize harmonic progressions, and you can also see the larger form in a piece. And this will speed up the learning and also really help you understand what to expect. So let's take an example. Let's take Bach's iconic Prelude in C major from the Well-Tempered Clavier, Book 1. So by understanding more about theory, we can really enhance the interpretation of a piece like this. For example, it's important for us to understand basic phrasing. If we look at this particular passage, these first 4 bars, I can immediately see that we have different chords in each bar. We have the first bar of C major. The second bar is basically D minor with what we call a pedal point. This C is remaining, but it's D minor. And then we go to a G dominant 7th, and then we go to C major. And so for me, when I'm actually sight reading this particular piece, because I know my theory, I can sight read it much easier. And when I hear, for example, when I hear a G dominant 7th chord, without even thinking, I just know it's gonna go resolve to its tonic. These are the patterns of theory, these are the patterns of music making and composition that through study and time, we can begin to predict and understand. And so what's also important is in this particular phrase, someone might say, well, how do you know how to shape it dynamically? And if we know and understand harmony, we understand that in theory, oftentimes dissonance is going to be the moment of most tension. And then consonance is relaxation. So by following that fundamental trajectory of harmonic relationships, we can then discover how to phrase a simple 4-bar phrase in this way. I want to also introduce a concept that's used by Beethoven, by Schubert, and more, but really championed by Schubert. And that is something called a chromatic mediant. Basically what that is where we have a deceptive cadence. Here's an example of how we can understand the music better by knowing what something is. Take Schubert's B-flat major sonata, the second movement. It's a very beautiful C-sharp minor andante. And so a chromatic mediant is basically when a composer decides to modulate somewhere that's unexpected. So a lot of times we'll get to this moment in the piece where we're building in intensity. And at this moment, when we get this chord, this E major chord, for many people they say that's magical, that's genius. Another composer might have just done and gone to the expected C sharp minor resolution, but Schubert he goes there. And it's magical, but the basis of it is simple music theory. What is a chromatic median? Very, very simply, the idea is that instead of going to a particular key of C sharp minor, we go to a key that's a third relation away from it. So C sharp minor could be an E, E major, or it could be even A major. In this case, what's happening is we have to understand that keys that are a third apart from each other share common tones. When keys and chords share common tones, we can move fluidly between them. So for example, if I do this, we have C, B, C, but I could also do something like this. I still have that melodic note, but now slightly different flavor, or we can kind of play around with all the different combinations. And that's what a chromatic median does. It creates a sense of something magical happening to the harmony. It's unexpected, but it's defined exactly as a chromatic median. One of the other important chords that we should know is something called the Neapolitan chord. What is that? It's a flat 2 chord. So very simply, let's look at C major. The first note is 1, C. Second note is D, so that's number 2. Take that note, D, flat it, make it a major chord. We get D flat major. So a Neapolitan chord in the key of C major is a D flat major chord. An example of the Neapolitan chord can be found in Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata in the very opening. So here we're in the key of C sharp minor. So I'm using the natural C sharp minor scale right now. So in C sharp minor, the second note is D sharp, right? And if I flat that, I go to D natural. And if I make D natural major, I get D major. So in relation to C sharp minor, those are the two chords that I'm looking at. And I'm trying to find that D major chord. And we see it in bar 3. So I'm going to play a little bit faster for us. What is that chord? That's a D major chord. And so that's going to function as a Neapolitan chord in this particular opening. Let's listen to what would happen if he didn't flat that 2, make it a Neapolitan chord. I mean, at that point, you're saying, oh no, Dominic, don't do that, it sounds terrible. But some lesser composer might have done that harmony doesn't sound terrible, right? Like that. But Beethoven, Neapolitan. So it's amazing what one note, one flat 2 in this case, can do to affect this harmony. And again, it's magical, but it is grounded in theory, understanding this. The reason I use these examples is because when Beethoven, Schubert, Bach, Mozart, any of these composers wrote music, these composers loved theory. If they love theory, we should too. The composers knew exactly what they were doing. They sort of expect us to also know that. For them, it's not some necessarily inspiration in the wind that comes to them. It's the curation of their innate abilities, their genius, and all the tools at their disposal, such as understanding chromatic medians, Neapolitan chords, and more. All of that combines together for them to craft these masterpieces.